My name is Quint Mediate, and I'll be playing Prior Walter. Prior Walter is a gay man living in New York City in the 1980s, and he is living with AIDS. He goes through a very, very difficult time in his life over the course of this play. I think it's really interesting to track, the show tracks two couples, Prior and Lewis, one of the gay couples, and then Joe and Harper, which are the Mormon couple. And it's really interesting to see how those couples parallel one another in this play. And so kind of seeing how those characters overlap and parallel and kind of this weird interconnectedness in these couples, I think is something that I was not really aware of before the process began. And then seeing other scenes unfold and seeing how I interact with other people and how Lewis, who's my kind of primary scene partner, interacts with Joe, and seeing this weird interrelatedness between the characters was something that unexpected happened throughout the process. The reality of living with AIDS when I'm in a scene, and I think just really living in the reality of knowing that I'm going to die soon, knowing that this disease that I'm living under is a death sentence, that is something very hard to shake, I think, in rehearsal. And there's this inner strength within him that I really, really admire. As a gay man myself, the character just is so important to me for what he represents and what he represents for the LGBTQ community on stage. And what's very interesting is this show is actually cast back in May of 2018. So we will close part 2 in May of 2019. So we'll essentially have a full year of knowing the show and knowing the role that we were going to have within the show. Everyone's like, okay, what's your dream role? And this is definitely one of those dream roles for me. It feels like every day I'm going to rehearsal and just living out a dream and just living out something that I've wanted to do for a while. So it's really, really special. I think this play really requires you to find a common affinity with somebody who maybe doesn't have the same labels as yourself, but we all have to learn how to live with one another.
My blood is clean and my brain is fine, and I can handle pressure. I'm a gay man, and I'm used to pressure.
Yeah, it's just a very light play. I do think you get the full experience if you do see both parts, and you get the grand story and the catharsis that part 1 really brings in the second half. So definitely come and see part 2 as well. Yes, I'm definitely excited for the angel scene, which happens in part 2. That should just be a very interesting scene to block with our fabulous Jasmine Walker, who's playing the angel. Also, part 1 is just very trying for Prior in that he's diagnosed with this disease and then he sees the effects of this disease, but not giving too much away. I feel like he earns a lot of moments in part 2 because of all the trauma that he went through in part 1. And so I'm really kind of excited to have those redeeming moments in part 2, as right now in part 1 I'm kind of living through the trauma.